When I teased the alien woman about her balloons, she couldn't resist saying yes. Suspended between worlds. The magnetic docking clamps released with a gentle hiss as Marcus Chen stepped into Celestia 7's reception bay. The floating research station hung like a jewel against the velvet backdrop of space, its transparent walls offering breathtaking views of the nebula beyond. He adjusted his research kit, trying to calm the nervous energy that had nothing to do with his xenobiology presentation and everything to do with meeting the Stellaris delegation. Dr. Chen, welcome aboard, Captain Rivera greeted him warmly. The cultural exchange is already underway in the main atrium. You're just in time for something spectacular. As they glided through the station's corridors, Marcus heard it before he saw it, a sound like wind chimes made of starlight. The atrium doors parted, revealing a scene that stole his breath. Dozens of luminescent spheres floated throughout the vast space, each pulsing with colors that seemed impossible, shades between violet and silver that his eyes couldn't quite name. At the center of it all stood Solara Nyx. She moved with liquid grace, her iridescent skin catching the light from her creations. Her dark hair floated around her shoulders like a midnight cloud, and when she gestured, the spheres responded, dancing through the air in perfect synchronization. Marcus found himself mesmerized not just by the display, but by the joy radiating from her expression. The spheres are biophotonic constructs, whispered Ambassador Thorne beside him. Each one contains a fragment of their homeworld's atmosphere. She calls them constellation spheres, they're both art and science. As if sensing his gaze, Solara turned. Their eyes met across the crowded room, hers were the color of distant galaxies, swirling with depths he couldn't fathom. She smiled, a gesture that seemed both alien and utterly familiar, and one of her spheres drifted toward him, pulsing with warm golden light. Careful, she called out, her voice carrying a musical quality that made his pulse quicken. They're attracted to curiosity. That one seems to like you. Marcus reached out tentatively, and the sphere bobbed against his palm like a friendly creature. What happens if I'm too curious? Her laugh was like the sound of solar winds through crystal. Then you might find yourself floating away with them. Would that be so terrible? The sphere pulsed brighter, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a gravitational pull that had nothing to do with the station's artificial gravity and everything to do with the enchanting woman controlling the lights. Dancing with starlight. Marcus stepped closer to examine the sphere hovering near his hand, his scientific instincts overtaking his caution. The luminescence pattern, is it responding to bioelectric fields? Something like that, Solara said, gliding toward him with an amused expression. She wore a flowing garment that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, shifting between transparency and opacity with her movements. Would you like to try? Before he could respond, she took his hand. Her touch was warm, surprisingly human despite the subtle shimmer of her skin. The secret is not to control them, she whispered, guiding his fingers in a graceful arc. Think of it as a conversation. The sphere responded immediately, spiraling upward before splitting into 3 smaller orbs that circled them both. Marcus laughed in delight, nearly losing his concentration. This is incredible. The applications for interspecies communication alone. Always the scientist, Solara teased, releasing his hand but staying close. Can't you just enjoy the beauty without dissecting it? Sorry, occupational hazard. He watched the spheres dance around her, drawn to her like planets to a sun. Though I have to ask, why do they cluster around you like that? Like you're their favorite person. She tilted her head, a gesture he was learning meant mischief. Perhaps they recognize a kindred spirit. We both enjoy floating through life, creating beautiful chaos. One sphere brushed against his shoulder, leaving a trail of silver light. Or perhaps they're trying to tell me something about you. What could floating alien light balloons possibly say about me? That you're too grounded, she said, suddenly taking both his hands. Come, let me show you something. She pulled him toward the center of the atrium where the artificial gravity was weakest. As their feet left the floor, the spheres multiplied around them, creating a cocoon of swirling lights. Marcus felt his stomach flip, not from the weightlessness, but from the way she looked at him, her eyes reflecting the dancing colors. The truth about my constellation spheres, she said softly, their bodies slowly rotating in the gentle null gravity field, is that they're empathic. They don't just respond to bioelectric fields, they respond to emotions, to connections being formed. The spheres pulsed in synchronization with his suddenly rapid heartbeat. And what are they showing now? Her fingers intertwined with his, anchoring them together in the weightless space. Something I didn't expect when I came here, she admitted. That maybe some distances are meant to be crossed. Weightless confessions. Would you like to see where I create them? Solara asked as they finally touched back down to the station floor, her cheeks flushed with an opalescent sheen that Marcus was beginning to recognize as her version of blushing. The crowd in the atrium had thinned, the formal presentation over, leaving them in relative privacy. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice after their weightless dance. She led him through a lesser-used corridor to a private studio in the station's zero-gravity wing. The door sealed behind them with a soft whisper, and Marcus gasped. The entire room was filled with constellation spheres in various stages of completion, some mere wisps of light, others complex geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. But what caught his attention was the wall covered in what looked like paintings made of pure light. My memories of home, Solara explained, floating up to touch one. The image shimmered, showing a city of crystal spires beneath 3 moons. And this, she moved to another, is my first view of Earth from our ship. Marcus pushed off gently, floating up beside her. The Earth in her painting wasn't quite right, the colors were shifted, seeing through alien eyes, but it was beautiful in its strangeness. What did you think when you first saw it? That it looked lonely, she said quietly. 1 sun, 1 moon. We have 3 of each on Stellaris Prime. But then I learned about your oceans, your storms, the way your people find beauty in chaos and change. She turned to face him, and they were close, so close in the zero gravity. You're nothing like what I expected. Neither are you, Marcus admitted, his hand finding hers again. When they told me about the Stellaris delegation, I expected. I don't know. Distant. Alien. And instead, I find someone who makes me want to throw away my research notes and just float. She laughed, the sound creating tiny light ripples in the nearest spheres. Dr. Marcus Chen, are you saying I'm a bad influence? The worst, he agreed, pulling her closer. Their foreheads touched, and he could feel a slight electric tingle where her skin met his. Not unpleasant, more like the feeling before lightning strikes. Solara, I know, she whispered. The delegation leaves in 3 days. This is impossible. The best things usually are. His thumb traced her cheek, marveling at the way her skin seemed to capture and reflect light. But maybe impossible is just another distance to cross. She kissed him then, soft and electric, and every constellation sphere in the room burst into brilliant, joyous light. Orbiting Hart's observation deck had been transformed for the evening's farewell celebration. Bioluminescent displays from a dozen different worlds created an indoor aurora, casting everything in shifting waves of impossible colors. Marcus stood at the viewport, watching Solara work with the other artists to synchronize their contributions into one harmonious display. She caught his eye and smiled, that secret smile they'd been sharing for 2 days now, since their first kiss in her studio. They'd stolen moments between official functions, breakfast watching the nebula, quiet conversations in empty corridors, hands brushing whenever they passed. She's quite taken with you, Ambassador Thorne appeared beside him, holding 2 glasses of something that sparkled like liquid starlight. The Stellaris people don't form attachments easily. Their lifespans are different from ours. Marcus accepted the drink. How different? Centuries, if their medical data is accurate. Makes what you're doing either very brave or very foolish. Before Marcus could respond, the lights dimmed and music began, a haunting melody that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Solara appeared at his elbow, having moved with that silent grace he was still getting used to. Dance with me, she said, not a question but an invitation to something more. They moved onto the floor, where other pairs, human and alien, swayed to the ethereal music. Her hand in his felt right, natural, despite everything that said it shouldn't. The constellation spheres she'd created specifically for tonight floated above them, creating a canopy of stars. I've been thinking, she murmured as they turned slowly, her head resting against his shoulder. My research grant on Stellaris Prime allows for collaborative work. Earth scientists are welcome to apply. His heart skipped. Are you asking me to come with you? I'm asking if you'd consider it. 6 months on my world, then 6 on yours. We could make it work, Marcus. The distance between stars doesn't have to mean distance between us. He pulled back to look at her, seeing his own hope reflected in her galaxy eyes. The board would never approve, they already have, she interrupted, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. I may have had Kyra submit a proposal for xenobiological research collaboration. Your Captain Rivera seemed very enthusiastic about the cultural benefits. Marcus laughed, spinning her in a circle that made her dress flare out like a nebula. You wonderful, scheming creature. Is that a yes? Instead of answering with words, he kissed her there on the dance floor, not caring who saw. The constellation spheres above them exploded in a shower of golden sparks, raining down harmless light that made everyone gasp and applaud, thinking it was part of the show. Only they knew it was simply her joy made manifest. Gravity's sweet pull. Dawn came too soon, or what passed for dawn on a station that created its own day cycles. Marcus found Solara in the observation lounge where they'd first danced, her luggage, strange crystalline containers that hummed softly, already staged for transport. Second thoughts? She asked, though her tone was light. She was creating small constellation spheres absently, letting them drift and fade like sighs. No, he said firmly, sitting beside her and taking her hand. Just thinking about everything that's about to change. Change isn't always chaos, she said, leaning into him. Sometimes it's evolution. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the nebula slowly shift beyond the viewport. The past 3 days felt like a lifetime and an instant simultaneously. Marcus had already submitted his research proposal, packed his essentials, and arranged for his Earth duties to be covered. It was insane, impulsive, and completely unlike him. It was perfect. Tell me about your home, he said. The real details, not the tourist information. Her eyes lit up. The cities sing at sunset, the crystal structures resonate with the changing temperature. We have forests of what you might call glass trees, but they're actually living silicon organisms. The 3 moons create tides in our atmosphere, not our oceans, so we have winds that can carry you for miles if you know how to read them. And your family. They'll be fascinated by you. My mother is a xenopsychologist. She'll have 1,000 questions. My father creates stellar maps using captured light from dying stars. He'll want to show you Earth's sun from our perspective. She paused, suddenly shy. They've never met someone I've chosen before. The weight of that statement settled between them. Chosen. Not just attracted to, not just dating, chosen. Solara, he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. I know we've only had 3 days. I know it's too fast by both our species standards. But when you've lived as long as we do, you learn to recognize the extraordinary when it happens. And this, us, is extraordinary. The boarding announcement echoed through the station. Around them, delegates began moving toward the departure bay. Solara stood, and Marcus rose with her, their hands still linked. Ready for an adventure, Dr. Chen? She asked, creating one last constellation sphere that shaped itself into a heart before dissipating. With you? Always, he replied, meaning it more than any scientific truth he'd ever stated. Together they walked toward the ship that would take them to Stellaris Prime, leaving familiar stars behind for unknown constellations. The gravity that pulled them together was stronger than any force that might pull them apart. As they crossed the threshold into their new future, Marcus realized that sometimes the best discoveries weren't found in laboratories or research papers, but in the courage to let someone from another world entirely change the trajectory of your heart. The end.